Canadian Prime Minister Carney just delivered a fatal blow to Donald Trump, and he did it in the United States. Specifically, Prime Minister Carney traveled to New York, where he spoke at the Economic Club of New York, and he blasted Donald Trump in what I think was Prime Minister Carney's most powerful speech yet. Let me show you what went down. Prime Minister Carney said that the United States has transformed its commercial relationships, moving away from its former alliances, and Canada was the first to recognize this betrayal by Donald Trump in the United States. Let's watch.
The U.S. is transforming all of its commercial relationships, as is its right. The world is becoming more divided and dangerous. And Canada recognized these developments earlier than most, and our response reflects the core lesson that we've taken from these tectonic shifts. Namely, that is that we have to take care of ourselves and we have to be true to ourselves. Taking care of ourselves means building our strength at home and diversifying our partnerships abroad.
Next, Prime Minister Carney talks about how Canada has diversified its partnerships, signing more than 20 economic and security deals across 5 continents. In other words, checkmate, Donald. You tried to screw us over. I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to give this speech in the Economic Club in New York and talk about the economic partnerships that we forged while you've destroyed and trashed your former alliances. Let's play this clip.
Now, in parallel, we're diversifying our partnerships abroad. We've signed more than 20 economic and security deals across 5 continents in the past 12 months. Our existing free trade accords already provide access to 1.5 billion consumers from the EU through to the CPTPP. We're now on track to double that addressable market this year with new deals with India, the ASEAN countries, Mercosur, Thailand, and the Philippines. We're the only non-European member of SAFE, which is the Europeans' Defense Procurement Initiative. Now, one of our core objectives of these partnerships, yes, it's access to markets, but it's also to increase our strategic autonomy. Because we all live in a world where integration has been weaponized. Think critical minerals. Because a country that can't feed, fuel, or defend itself is not truly sovereign. Because, as well, strategic autonomy today extends to building partnerships and capabilities across AI, financial payments, space, critical minerals, as I said, and clean energy. And we are making progress because Canada has much of what the world needs and wants, from energy to key aspects of aerospace, cyber, AI, and quantum.
Then Prime Minister Carney talks about how if you want to be smart, US, maybe you should partner with Canada. But it ain't going to be the old Canada. It's going to be a much more confident, a much more powerful, a much more independent Canada. That's what's going down right now. The rules have changed, Donald. Watch what Prime Minister Carney says here. Let's play this clip.
As a country whose founding values of liberty, democracy, justice, and openness should continue to serve as guides to its future and the future of the world, that future should include a new partnership with Canada, a true partnership that reimagines cooperation in specific sectors that are deeply challenged by global competition, a partnership with a different Canada, a stronger Canada, a more confident Canada, a country that is applying the lessons from past crises, a country unleashing its enormous potential, a country aggressively translating our belief in openness into dozens of new partnerships, a country that's predictable, reliable, and principled in a world that's anything but.
I told you it was a powerful speech. It gives me chills talking about this speech. More from Prime Minister Carney here at the Economic Club of New York, and he talks about how blessed Canada is with its commodities and resources, which is great. The natural resources. But Prime Minister Carney says putting the screws in and twisting it when it comes to Donald Trump. Our greatest resource of all is trust. People trust Canada. And in today's day and age, where there's a lot of people who are losing trust, Hint, hint, you, Donald Trump, in the United States, where I'm giving this speech, Canada continues to earn trust. Watch this clip.
And we're also making progress because our reputation as a reliable, predictable partner has rarely been more valuable in a world where transactions are replacing relationships. We're blessed with many commodities in Canada, but we have earned the most valuable one, which is trust.
More from Prime Minister Carney right here. And this was probably my favorite line, where he says, you know what? A much stronger, much more independent Canada, that's what's going to make America great again. A much stronger Canada. This is what you want, Donald. This is what you get. Here, play this clip.
At a time of a global energy crisis, Canada provides the United States with reliable power, with critical minerals that help fuel American growth. 99% of U.S. natural gas imports, 85% of electricity imports, 60% of crude oil imports. That is mutual strength. Let's be absolutely clear. Canada Strong will help make America great again. Examples of where that's true are legion, where we should work together and compete with the world together.
And then Prime Minister Carney declares, Canada is an energy superpower. Let's talk about how powerful Canada really is. We're bold, we're confident, and we're going to flaunt it right now. Play this clip.
By the end of this decade, Canada will export nearly 50 million tons of LNG annually. By the end of the next decade, we will double that capacity. We're advancing a potential pipeline that would carry at least 1 million barrels of low-emission Alberta oil per day to Asian markets, while creating an entirely new industry of large-scale carbon capture and storage. We're building, right now, the world's first operational small modular reactor in the G7, while expanding our world-leading uranium production. In the past year, we have signed 56 critical mineral agreements with more than 10 countries, unlocking more than $18 billion in capital, while reducing dependence on foreign chokeholds in that critical supply chain. We are doubling our electricity grid. That's more than 160 gigawatts of new power, building on the lowest cost power in the G7 and the second lowest emission power in the OECD. That is what an energy superpower looks like when it decides to really act as one.
More from Prime Minister Carney right here, where he says also, get a little smarter, United States, because when it comes to America's growing energy needs, you're going to need us. So if you want to make a smart deal, doesn't it make sense to look to the Canadians for your energy needs? Because I hear your inflation's not doing all that good, Donald. I hear that the people are struggling, and you promised that you were going to cut energy costs in half, and you've made energy costs go through the roof, Donald. Here, play this clip.
Where we should work together and compete with the world together. And to those ends, we have made specific practical proposals to the U.S. administration. Consider aluminum. It's basically electricity in an ingot. And Canadian exports to the United States are the energy equivalent of 10 Hoover dams. With America's growing energy needs because of the incredible transformation here, does it really make sense to build the gigawatts here needed to replace Canada? On automobiles, Canada is far and away America's biggest customer, and an integrated North American market for production is the best and most durable way to confront intense, truly intense global competition. On critical minerals, with our endowments from potash, nickel, copper, uranium, lithium, cobalt, beyond, Canada can be the most reliable supplier that America needs to put affordable food on the table, strengthen national defense, and meet the exploding demand to power AI.
And after Prime Minister Carney gave that speech, there was a kind of question and answer period as well. And then Prime Minister Carney talks about his meeting with Xi Jinping. And this is what was so great about it. Prime Minister Carney drops The Thucydides trap. That's right. Remember how Xi Jinping told Donald, you should not fall into the Thucydides trap, right? And it's a reference to Thucydides' writings on the Peloponnesian War, where Sparta and Athens got into this war because the rising power in Athens intimidated Sparta. So the war became inevitable, and China was giving the warning to the United States, we're that rising power. We're the new Athens. You're the old Sparta. We shouldn't fall into the Thucydides trap. Get out of our way, Donald. China is the dominant hegemon right now, and America is a declining power. Remember, Xi Jinping talked to Trump that you're a declining power, and Trump's like, yeah, but Xi, aren't I a little hot? Didn't I make us a little bit hot? Remember how humiliating it is? And that was. So Carney brings up Thucydides trap, but he also brings it up in the context of cooperation when it comes to green energy and climate change. You know that will drive Donald Trump crazy, because Carney's point is that green energy, addressing climate change, being innovative in the energy sector is not just the right thing to do, not just helps forge broader multilateral alliances, but it's smart economically. Watch this. Let's play this clip.
I raised with him the Thucydides trap. Now, I raised it with him because I had been in a meeting with him with a handful of U.S. CEOs a few years previous, and President Xi had raised it in that context. And I quoted, in effect, back to him, the president, saying, I remember you said that, and what you said at the time was the way out of it is cooperation on issues of global public interest. So what are the issues of global public interest, leading them to where is that cooperation between the hegemons he's really talking about, but others supporting? And, for him, at least in the response then, which in fairness was more or less what he'd said 2 years previously, is around climate, is around clean energy and climate, and we're establishing a leadership there, but everyone needs it, and how are we going to share this, and how are we going to finance it, et cetera. And his point there was exactly that, how do we restructure the institutions?
Told you that was great. Then Prime Minister Carney gives his assessment of the battlefield in Russia's war against Ukraine. Here's what he says. Let's play it.
Put human suffering in context. The terrible civilian suffering. The civilian suffering in Ukraine, the direct hits. But Russia's losing 35,000 troops a month. 22 to 23, depending on the month, of those troops are killed. The balance are incapacitated, to use a euphemism, but will not fight again. They're losing troops faster than they can replace them. They are not gaining territory. Ukraine is able to strike, as you see, increasingly deep into Russian territory on strategic energy and other targets, and they are doing so, and they will continue to do so. Russian economy is under more pressure. This can go on for longer than any of us already has, but can continue to go on. But the balance of force is moving in the Ukrainians' direction.
And Carney recognizes the importance of Ukrainian weapons, the cutting edge, technological innovation coming from the Ukrainians. Here's what he says. Play this clip.
So we and others are following the Danish model, where we're partnering with, because Denmark pioneered this, we're partnering with Ukrainian defense contractors. We're financing them to produce drones and other things for Ukraine's defense. But then we're building capacity in Canada and Denmark and other places so that we can build that out for the future for our own defense, because the cutting edge of defensive warfare is in Ukraine, and the integration of autonomous warfare, AI, and those defenses are in Ukraine. So part of this, Canada has been a laggard. We're no longer a laggard in defense spending. We're not going to be a laggard. But part of the advantage of being a laggard, there's sometimes an advantage, is when technology and things are changing, we will catch up at the frontier, or at least that is very much our intention.
Now, right before that trip, Prime Minister Carney announced this incredible defense deal with Sweden. Canada announced that they will enter into detailed discussions and formal negotiations with Saab as the preferred supplier of Canada's future AWACS, enabled by Saab's GlobalEye. They already have a great relationship. Bombardier, a Canadian company, GlobalEye and Saab, they work together on a lot of things. This is all about ensuring that Canada's defense needs are met, but also its sovereignty is protected. And Canada did not go with the U.S. version of the AWAC, which is the E7, the new version of the E3 Sentry. Remember the E3? That was that billion-dollar plane, if you will, that was destroyed at the Saudi Arabian base in the catastrophic war against Iran. Remember that? And so also what Canada's doing right now is they're doing a review of the F-35 purchases, because I think Canada may go with Sweden's Gripen. We saw Ukraine announce its purchase of these Gripens, which are very effective. Zelensky announced the Gripen purchase yesterday when he was in Sweden. And I think Canada may go with the Sweden Gripen as well, because I think people are moving away from the U.S. in all of these areas and disciplines. Also, have you seen this latest federal poll right here from Canada Projections? These are some of the top pollsters out there. Net opinion of countries as Canadian partners. United Kingdom, 83.5% approval as a partner. Germany, 82.4%. Mexico, 79.8%. France, 79.5%. China, negative 2.9%, but almost turning positive approval amongst Canadians. I think in about a year and a half, 2 years, Canada may be in positive territory. I think there's a little fear in Canada about the way China transacts business, whether its auto sector is going to destroy the Canadian auto sector. And there's been some conflicts, but that relationship is improving. But get this, with the United States, negative 38 right now. Negative 38 net opinion of the United States compared to China, net negative 2.9 versus France, plus 79.5. Now, Jason Kenney, who's the former premier of Alberta, the 18th premier there, and a former Canadian Minister of Defense, here's what he said after seeing that poll. Fellow Canadian conservatives, please reflect on this poll. Yes, the U.S. is and always will be our largest trading partner. And yes, we have to find a modus vivendi with whoever is in the White House, even a president who flippantly insults and threatens us. But it is self-defeating to attack the Prime Minister, Carney, for trying to diversify away from our imprudent dependence on an unreliable U.S. market. Have the humility to listen to Canadians. Stop dismissing Trump's attacks as a distraction, or worse yet, as somehow justified, and heed the wise words of Stephen Harper, former Canadian Conservative Prime Minister. Canada must adopt to new geopolitical realities. To be clear, these realities mean we must reduce our dependence on U.S. And in that same speech, I played it before, of Stephen Harper, where he was speaking, he said, I was one of the most pro-U.S., if not the most pro-U.S. Prime Minister, and I recognize the new reality as well. So Jason Kenney here is talking about, obviously, Pierre Poilievre and the Maple MAGA playbook that still wants to cozy up to Donald Trump, when the Canadian people, by and large, including conservatives, not just your Liberal Party, not just your NDP, not just your Green Party, but even many conservatives. That's why you have so much people from the Conservative Party going over to the Liberals there in Canada, saying we don't trust the U.S. While you have Pierre Poilievre still doing this Maple MAGA Danielle Smith Alberta shtick. And this guy's from Alberta, right? You know, and you got the Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre playbook, which is like the Viktor Orban playbook, right? It ain't where Canada's at right now. Maple Meidas, elbows up. We appreciate all our Canadian supporters. We appreciate all our international supporters. We appreciate all our supporters here and abroad. Thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be able to show you that speech of Prime Minister Carney and to share this information with you. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks for watching, y'all.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.